Hey guys, here we go again for the York Middle School drone class. So we're doing part 3 now. We just got done setting up our ESC. Now we're going to get the motors ready, so we're going to solder those to the ESC pads. And so here's our picture-in-picture again. This is where we're at, and now we're just going to start getting the motors ready here. So let's see. Let me make sure on how you guys will be mounting these. If you have these motors in place, these are going to be your counterclockwise motors right here. So as you can see, you've got your arrows here, and these arrows are going to tell you which direction this motor is going to spin. So this is going to spin counterclockwise, and that means that that bolt on top is going to actually tighten. So our counterclockwise are going to be motors number 2, which is up here, and motor number 3, which is back here. So let's go ahead and just get to mounting this. We're going to mount motor number 2 first. Now, I believe that you guys were using these screws, which are Phillips screws with a spacer on them, which is fine. You can keep using those. I'm actually just going to grab a 6mm screw with a hex nut there. And let me just give you a rule here to make sure that you do this properly. If you've got a 3mm carbon fiber here, you want to make sure that you don't go more than, let's say, 2mm past, maybe 2.5 past the carbon fiber height. Now, I know that this carbon fiber is going to be about 3mm, give or take a little, and these 6mm screws are going to be okay, but you wouldn't want to go with like a 7 because you may actually touch the windings inside, and if you do that and touch the windings of the motor, those little copper things in there, you short out the motor, you heat it out, right? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and do this, and we're going to just put, we're going to run this, and we're going to just put a couple screws in for now to hold it in place. You guys can use your Phillips screws if you want. Those are just fine. Just make sure you use that spacer with it. All right, let's tighten that down. Don't tighten it too much, though, because you still have to line up the other screws, right? So at least go catty corner on this one, just like that. All right, now you can fly just fine with 2 screws. You don't even have to put 4 screws in your drone. A lot of the new frames that come out now, we're doing only 2 screws on them. It keeps it lighter, and actually they've been fine. So there's one motor right there, okay? And if you are going to be using, I don't know if you're going to be using heat shrink or not, so I wasn't sure if I was going to show you that. I guess I could show you the heat shrink part as well. But the first thing we want to do, right, before we do anything, is we want to make sure how much wire we need to have this sit properly. So as long as our ESC is mounted in here, and all these are equally spaced, once we get the distance for one motor, we can figure out the rest of them, right? So let's just run our wire however you're going to run it. Okay, now I'm going to run this in like this. I'm going to come around, and, sorry, this should be flipped this way. All right, now you've got a few ways you can do this. A lot of people will come through the center here and then just solder it directly. That's fine. It's a little more difficult to do that, especially with your spacing, but if you want to run that route, that's fine. Or you can come around here and then just turn it in and solder accordingly like this. Whichever way you want to do it. I think for the purpose of this is going to be 5mm in height. Let's just go ahead and come in here and turn it in, okay, like this, and then we'll just solder it this way. All right, and we could do that. That won't be a problem. As far as the length of the wire goes, I'm going to measure this one here, and I'm going to cut it where I believe it should be. Now, if you've already got your motor wires cut and ready, that's fine, but I need to plan this for those people who don't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend it to here, and I'm just going to snip these all at the same length, at the same spot, which is going to be about 2mm past the solder pad, just like that, okay? Now, that is my motor that I'm going to use as my measurement for the rest of the motors, okay? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take the screws out now. And I think some people's motor wires were a little shorter and they got extended. I know that 2 of the motors in this student kit that was given to me had wires extended. So what we're going to do is we're going to just take these, just line them up like that. Make sure you get them as even as you can. And at this point, just cut your wire, okay? Let me line this up. All right, and I'm just going to cut it to the, I'm going to find the longest of the 3 wires that I cut, and I'm going to cut it to that one. All right, so there's this. There we go. Those 2 are going to be fine. We can go ahead and do this again. So both here, run the wire up, and again find the longest wire, which is this one. Cut them all to that. There we go. And then we got one more to go. Once you get these all sized the same way, because this frame is the same. Oh, this one's already been cut, so perfect. So this is ready to go. Okay. So with that being said, get rid of all the trash. all the wires you don't need, right? Let's toss those out in the trash, and you want to make sure that your area stays a little clean here. So I'm going to go ahead and wipe mine down one time. Let's see if I can just get this a little clean. All right. Okay, so now we're going to need to prep our motors. Okay, so to prep the motors, what you're going to want to do is get your wire cutter here. All right. And just to give you an idea of what I'm going to be telling you here, I'm trying to find my ruler, but don't know where I put it. I must have set it aside. Hold on one second. Let me see if I can find that. Oh, all right. I put it somewhere. Don't know exactly where right now, but here's what we're going to do. You're going to be looking at cutting this. Let's just say, let me see, about. See, I think. Oh, you know what? I know where it is. It's right here. Okay, got my ruler back so I can show you guys what I'm talking about. Right, in millimeters, you want to strip down about, let's just say 3 millimeters of wire. Okay, so use that as your guide. Just enough. You're not going to leave that all most likely, but just kind of get used to doing about 3 millimeters. All right, and so we're going to do all the motors at one time. Now this, just so that we don't have to keep coming back to this. So let's go ahead now and make sure we do all 4 motors the same way. All right, try to get them about the same length, just like that. A lot of this is going to be make sure that your work is uniform and it's precise on all the motors and all the components you use. So try your best to keep everything as even as possible. All right, so here we go. 1, 2, and we'll do the third one. Okay, and then let's do this last one here. Okay, now again, make sure to clean up your bench. So let's go ahead and just get all this up. And get as much debris as you can off of here. I have a little vacuum that I use on my table as well. The biggest thing you want to avoid is getting anything inside those motor windings. There's magnets in there, and if you get anything stuck in there, it's going to make this motor heat up. It's probably not going to spin properly, and then you could burn the motor out. So just try to keep your bench clean. Get like maybe a Clorox wipe or a sanitary wipe, one of these things that you can use like on your hands or on the kitchen counter or whatever. I'm going to use this little wipe here and just start wiping the table down, your work area down. Just make sure it stays clean. Especially watch out for these metal spacers that you guys are using because they can get, they are magnetic and they will get caught up right into that motor magnet. So please make sure you don't leave those laying around. All right. Okay, so our bench is clean now. Here's our motors. So here's what we're going to do next. We're going to get our flux paste right here, and we're going to get our helping hands, okay? Because we have to pre-tin all of these, okay? So we're going to go ahead and dip these in the flux paste, and then we're going to spin them up. And spin them up, I mean twist all the wires inside to kind of make it a real nice tight fitting so that the wires do not splinter out or spread out, because if they do, then they can short out whatever's next to them. So take all your motors, do that, and if you don't have flux paste, that's fine. Just let me know and I will help you get some. We carry it here in stock, and it's extremely affordable. It's not a very expensive item at all, actually, but it is somewhat of a necessity. Between a flux paste and a flux pen, those two things are going to be what we use when we solder. So you're going to need to have those at some point. You cannot solder without the flux pen. I would never try to do that. And your solder needs to be 6337 solder, which is a lead-based solder with a 2% rosin core, 1.8 to 2%, somewhere around there, and we have that as well, and we have that in very small amounts. Again, it's very inexpensive, but if you do not use the right solder, then you are going to have a really bad time soldering your flight controller and your ESC. Okay, so please make sure that you're using the right equipment. If you need help with that, it's all on our website under tools. There's a whole area called soldering supplies, and that's where you would find all these things. All right. So what we're going to do now is use our helping hands, and we're going to start tinning up the wires on our motor, okay? And we're going to do all 4 of these so that we're done with it. So get your soldering iron ready. Mine needs to be cleaned just a little bit here, so let me just kind of clean that up. All right, so there we go. So now let's get our solder, and we're going to do the same thing we did when we were doing the power cables. We're just going to basically bring the solder around, and we're going to make sure that these wire strands end up with a little bit of solder on them. There's one. Let's do the next 2. All right, here will be 2. Try to make sure you cover it as much as you can. All right, and let's just do the third one. This is the third wire of motor 1. Yeah, this one right here. Okay, there you go. Motor 1 is done. You can set that aside. Let's get the next motor. Okay, there's motor 2. This will be the second wire of motor 2. And then you got your last wire. Okay, that's 2 motors out of the way. Let's do motor 3. I need a little more solder now. Okay, we're about to do the third wire on motor 3, and then we've got one more motor to go, and then we'll put some heat shrink on there. Okay. Guys, I'll tell you, if you don't tin it properly, when you go to solder it, you're going to see some of these wire strands spreading out. Because those pads are so close on the ESC, if you don't do it properly and they spread out, these wire strands could touch the other pad. If they touch the other pad, your motor will fail. All right, so please take your time and make sure that it is solid and that you tin everything properly, okay? It's very important that you do this and you take your time. And if you have any questions, just let me know. But there you go. Okay, so let me show you. We just did all 4 motors. They're all tinned. All right, let me put soldering iron up. Move this out of the way. And now, for those of you that have heat shrink tubing, which if you don't, again, we have it on the website, but under our heat shrink section. But this is a good time to go ahead and add that, but you have to be very specific about how you do it. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Let me grab some heat shrink here, okay? These are one of the heat shrink kits that we offer on our website. You guys can find those. They're nothing expensive at all. So I'm going to pick a color like this. It's kind of this hot orange, reddish orange looking color. When you put this on, hopefully this will be the right size. I'm going to check real quickly. Okay, so one of the things about the heat shrink, and if it's hard to put that on there, just slide one wire through and then slide the other wire through. It may be sometimes hard to fit all 3, especially if the wires have been extended to fit it through there. But let me just see if I can make this fit. If I can make this fit, great. If not, we'll go with a different size and color. Okay, so there's our heat shrink, right? But here's the critical part. When you do heat shrink, it's intended to protect the wire, obviously, and you're going to most likely zip tie your wire in this area. But the other thing you want to do is you want to make sure that your wires stay in order, meaning your middle wire stays in the middle and doesn't cross over. Your wire on the right, your wire on the left, they all stay in their position, right? So here's how you do that. I'll put this out of the way. So once you slide your heat shrink on there, make sure that you can see right here, this area. Let me kind of zoom in maybe just a little bit. So you see how I can see right here, right? I'll use this. I'll use these tweezers to point out. So here's the heat shrink put on by the factory. Here's the wire. Here's our heat shrink, and here's the wire coming out of it, right? So I want to make sure that the 3 here are straight, and they are 1, 2, 3. And I want to make sure that if I run my finger down here, that when it comes out, they're straight on this side. If they're crossed, right, you would notice that they're crossed because there will be a bump in here, and it won't be straight. So once you're sure that it's straight, let me kind of zoom back out now, right about there. Okay. Once you're sure that it's straight, push your heat shrink all the way up and butt it up against the heat shrink from the manufacturer, from the factory there, on the motors, so that you don't have any exposed wire there. There, that's all you need to do. Hold on, I didn't mean to pull that back out. Let me slide that back down. Okay. Once you have that done, make sure that your wires are straight by running your finger on your heat shrink and make sure there's no crossed wires. They need to look straight like this when they come out, right? Then you're going to take your air gun, your heat gun, and you're going to do the following. You're going to aim it straight down here, and you're going to let that heat shrink just fall. And what you want to do is you want to see those 3 wires. So I'm only doing the top portion right now, and it should come out very flat. Press your fingers on there, spread it out, and that's how you can start seeing the indentation of the wires in there. That means they're perfectly straight, okay? That means they're not crossed, and that's what you want to avoid. Once you've got that, you can turn it over, make sure the rest of it's all heated up and shrunk properly, okay? You don't really have to go too much longer than this, because the main thing is that we're going to heat shrink, and then we're going to zip tie this section, okay? So what you want to do now is finish the other motors. So there's motor 1 right there. So I'm going to grab motor 2, and I'm going to grab a heat shrink. And if you do have a hard time kind of sliding on the wires, you can take a little bit of this flux paste. It's like, makes it real slippery right there, and that should make it pretty easy too. So let's see if I get this on there without having to do individual wires. Yep, so there we go. All right, so now you can see, look, here's a perfect example. When I lay this down, all my wires are kind of loppy-jawed all over the place, right? I could not tell you right now which wire is left, right, or center, okay? So I put my finger right here, make sure that it's flat, and just slide your finger across, and it'll flatten them out. All right, so there you go. Now I don't want the label of this heat shrink on there, so there I go right there. Slide it, make sure that they're flat. You'll feel if they're not, I promise. All right, now once you're ready to go ahead and do the same thing we did on the last one. But hold your wires, because if not, when this heat shrink shrinks, it'll actually pull the wires on the side over the middle. So you kind of want to make sure that you hold them at the beginning until it shrinks enough. Then you can go ahead and flip it over. Okay, there's motor 2. You see, you want them to look all uniform, and those are looking identical right there. Let's do motor 3. And if anybody's asking, I have the temperature of my air gun, my heat gun at 161 degrees Celsius. That's only because that's what's on there. You can set it. This stuff is made to shrink at lower temps, but I want to kind of move the pace here. So 160 degrees Celsius is fine. Now, when you have wires that have been extended like this, it's hard to fit those through all 3, so just do one at a time. When you get that heat shrink part through, then you can put the next wire. Okay, and then we'll do it again right here. All right. Feed that last one through, should be no problem. There you go. Once it comes through, just pull it through like that, and then start pressing this out so that all the wires straighten out. Okay, and there we go. They should be straight. They are. So put your heat shrink back. Run your finger through there. Make sure it's straight. It is. And like I said, make sure that you keep your finger here holding these wires in place, or else as this shrinks, it'll pull them over the center and they'll start crossing over. Okay, so again, let's do that. And if you see it like that one, it just started pulling anyway, just kind of press it down with your finger. It's not that hot to where you're going to burn yourself, really. You just want to, just like that. Okay, now once it's in place, go ahead and turn it over. Heat up the rest of it. Okay, there we go. That's 3 motors now. And we got 1 more to go, guys. Once that's done, we're ready to put this together. Get the motors at least soldered on, okay? Okay. All right, and there we go. So we are now done with that portion of this. So that's our motor prep, okay? So we did our ESC prep on the last video, and now we did our motor prep here. So what we're gonna do now is with these 4 motors, right there, just like that. We're going to stop at this point, and we're going to go to our next video, which will be getting the motors and the ESC together and finalizing that entire setup. If you have any questions, guys, as always, please go to the website, use our contact page on our website, and I'll be sure to answer you as quickly as I can. Otherwise, you guys, we'll see you shortly with the next video, and we'll talk to you then. Bye.